Hey all, and welcome back to another episode of There's Danger Here. I'm Leilani,
And I'm Sam.
and today is part 2 of our
Thank
story.
God.
I know. For everybody else out there, you had to wait a week. Sam had to wait like 10 whole minutes.
And I am like on the edge of my seat still.
But for a quick recap, we are talking about a man named Harvey who was previously sentenced to death in Alaska for murder and then got off on a technicality, went to Alcatraz for a while, in and out of prison. He went to Walla Walla Prison in Washington. And then on May 2nd, 1973, 15-year-old Kathy goes missing, and he is our biggest suspect at this point. Mary, her mother, is a strong advocate for her and is pushing and pushing to try and find her.
I would call her a strong badass.
Yes. And then on June 2nd, she feels as though she knows that Kathy's not coming home alive.
Which is so sad.
And that is the point where I dropped everybody off.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was telling Leilani in your week-long break, but my little break right now, this story like resonates because I have felt like everyone up until this point is doing what I would do.
Mm-hmm.
Like Mary is actively searching for her daughter the way I would assume a mother would search for them, which I feel like a lot of times in these stories we don't get that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what are you guys doing? You're all fucking up. But like this one is like, oh, she was on it from 2 hours after it felt wrong.
Mm-hmm.
She was like,
She
no,
knew, yeah.
we're doing this. We got to find this girl. And it's just heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm. And the detectives are doing amazing work
Right.
and following up on everything. And they are definitely, everybody's driving that bus right now.
Like the fact that they read the Miranda rights to Harvey the very first day that they like talked to him is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just, that so frequently is where that gets fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
Like they just go in, they start talking to this person, and then they can use none of it in court. And it's like, no.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they did not want that to take that chance. So.
Yeah.
All right. On June 3rd, so the next day, 2 boys were riding motorbikes in the Tulalip Indian Reservation north of Everett. They took a break to pick some salmon berries when they caught the scent of death.
Mm.
One boy moved forward and saw something wrapped in black plastic sheeting. So naturally, he called the other boy to come see, because that's what boys do. After deciding it looked like a body, the boys took off on their bikes and notified the tribal office. At the office, Snohomish County Sheriff's Office was called, and they told the boys to return to the intersection and wait for deputies to arrive so they could lead them to the actual location. The boys did, and there the police were brought about 15 feet off the road in a densely bushed area. They found a nude body wrapped in plastic with significant decomposition present, suggesting the body had been there for a while. The coroner was called and at the scene found a person lying on their side with one hand tucked under their chin. There were 2 nickel-sized holes behind the back of the right side of the skull, as well as a large area of crushing to the back of the left side of the skull. Teeth were intact. The victim had long blonde or light brown hair and had been killed at least a month prior. The coroner said that they were at the dump site, but not the kill site. They interviewed the closest person, a Kathy Sylvester.
I knew it. The second you said an Indian reservation, I was like, oh no.
Who had reported she had not seen anything suspicious lately. Yes, the Kathy Sylvester the detectives Bowman and Homan had just interviewed.
Yeah.
They were standing so close to Kathy and didn't even know it. Go ahead.
I don't even remember the appropriate quote, but it's like, there's no such thing as a coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
That's the definition of it right there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's also got to be heartbreaking for them.
Oh, yeah.
To know they were there and they missed her.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to find her easily, but
no, and
to
like,
just know that.
Potentially she wasn't there. Like, that's what I would tell myself. Like, maybe she was moved there after they were there.
No,
you know?
they think that right after she was killed.
there.
Yeah. When no missing persons were identified in Snohomish County matching the description, The description was forwarded to Everett and then on to Seattle Police Department. As soon as Seattle got the description, Bowman and Homan were called. Before calling Mary, the detectives had dental records sent to Dr. Emmanuel Bitar, who on June 4th made a tentative positive identification.
Yeah.
Autopsy showed that Kathy had been through it. Along with the injuries noted at the scene, she had fractures on her lateral orbit to the left eye. She had been beaten with a 2x4 hammer or tire iron based on the injuries she received. The detectives knew it was time to notify Mary, but unfortunately the media had gotten to her first.
Oh, no.
She already knew. But still, she thanked the detectives when they arrived. And it sounds like they explained like they didn't want to say we possibly found her and then have dental records say it wasn't her.
Right.
And kind of have to go through that heartache multiple times. And so she wasn't mad that they
waited.
She just was like, okay, thank you. And
yeah.
Which, I mean, how tough could that be?
I think you would be prepared to know, like, the minute you heard anything in the news about, like, this person has been found.
But there's always a hope that it's not.
Right. Right, for sure.
Yeah. So, I don't know. It's a tough one. The detectives keep trying. They finally get a warrant for Harvey's car, and a palm print is found on the passenger side window that wasn't cleaned. Because remember, Alice did not have the car detailed. She thought that was dumb. But the decay of Kathy was too great, and they couldn't get a suitable palm print to compare it to. The only other thing found were Minnesota maps with red circles in isolated areas. So, with nothing but circumstantial evidence, Harvey decides it's time to leave, and the detectives can do nothing but watch him go. On June 19th, 1973, Harvey left Washington. First, he headed south, receiving a speeding ticket in Solano County, California the next day, but he did not stay in California for long. He traveled next to Minnesota. And there's several reports that there are missing women around that time in California, but nothing has ever been positively linked to Harvey. So, and it was a lot of it was like, that feels like a reach even for like them saying that it could be him because he had a speeding ticket in the area. So I'm not including all their names.
Can you not like tell a person like you can't leave?
If they just because they're a suspect, yeah, you can't technically.
I feel like there's been so many
TV shows that say don't go anywhere, we're watching
Yeah.
you. Yeah, you can't actually do that unless they're under arrest.
Oh. That's crazy. Like, it also then makes me go, like, why do not more people just bounce then?
I have no idea. I don't know. Yeah, but without evidence, I mean, there's no way that they could arrest him. So why can they say you have to stay in the state? Be like, for what?
Right.
Like, you can't tell a normal citizen that. You can't tell me
Right.
just because you're watching me. There's not enough evidence
Right.
to, I mean, even arrest him at this point or get an interview in a police station. So, yeah, there's no way they can hold him for that.
Yeah.
On June 28th in Minneapolis, Marlise Townsend was waiting for a bus. She heard someone behind her and was hit with something in the back of the head, rendering her unconscious.
Oh, no. My prediction was wrong.
Way wrong. She woke up in a pickup truck and immediately attempted to get out of the truck. As she got her hand like on the door handle, the man grabbed her hair. Thankfully, she was wearing a wig.
Oh,
and it came off. And
surprise!
Like I guess it like came off, and he just looked shocked.
Yeah.
Like, and she like flew out the door, rolled, got up, and ran for her life.
Oh my God.
So she made it out, and she recalled to police that her attacker was a middle-aged man with graying brown hair, and the truck was a GM, and she was pretty sure it had a silver camper on it.
Oh, that's pretty like specific.
For running, yeah, for your life.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know if I would have looked back, but
yeah. Yeah, and she also was like knocked out and woke up in it, so it's not like she saw it.
That's why she's like pretty sure.
I'm really impressed with that.
I know, she's amazing. In order to sustain himself, he takes a job with a local construction company and gets a small apartment, but he continues to prowl in his off time. On September 9th, 1973, Harvey met a runaway who was hitchhiking to her boyfriend's. 13-year-old Jerry Billings got into a truck with a silver camper. They began to drive, but when she realized they were going the wrong way, she went to get out and he hit her with a hammer and then told her to give him a blowjob. That's
Oh,
gross.
disgusting.
He continued to drive as he attacked her and raping her with the hammer handle.
Oh my God.
Then they stopped in a field and he carried her out into the field in the middle of nowhere. He attempted to sodomize her but couldn't. And when he was done with his attack, he drove her to the closest city and let her out.
What?
I know. After a few days, she returned home but didn't say anything. Remember, she's a runaway. Her mother turned her into the state as a habitual runaway, and as such, she was sent to Red Wing Training School. It wasn't until October 29th she finally went to the police, taking a polygraph and then speaking about the attack, and she passed. From there, the information was given to Hennepin County, the county of the original abduction.
Wow.
In February of 1974, Harvey made a trip back to Seattle to try and win Alice over. She had previously filed assault charges against him, and so on the 27th, when he arrived, he was arrested and fingerprinted.
There you go.
However, Alice dropped the charges and Harvey was free to go.
No. Okay, so part one, there was lots of things that I was like, oh, yay, this all makes sense. This is now starting oh, it's all just unraveling.
It is. It is. And yeah, I guess this whole time that he was in Minnesota, he was writing her letters and kind of win her over and going over the good times and kind of glossing over the times that weren't great and oh, I miss you. Oh, I love you. Oh, I miss, and so when he went back there, they got back together and she had all the feelings again and so she dropped the charges. But he went back to Minnesota and she did not go with him.
Oh,
I know.
it's so it's also frustrating because I feel like if you were the police and you assumed that this man had committed this murder of this young girl, you would have I know you can't have eyes on him in Minneapolis and things like that. You could let the police know, obviously.
So they did, actually. They sent a whole docket of information about Harvey once they found out where he went to. So into Minnesota, they sent this whole packet and they were like, listen, he's a prime suspect. We don't have any evidence, but this is what we're thinking. This is his history from Alaska. And it found a pile of paper.
Right.
And was ignored.
I was just thinking again, it's different times, but I would hope that you would have any charge prepared for if he ever stepped foot back into your state.
That was their charge, the assault, but then
you're right, and then she dropped it.
She dropped it. They had it ready. And the assault is not an extraditable charge. So they had it waiting for him.
Yeah.
But because she dropped the charges, there's nothing they can do. Hands are tied at that point.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
In Washington State, you now no longer get to choose.
Good. Sometimes.
Yeah. It's sort of it's a double-edged sword to me, but
it is. Isn't that the state, if I remember correctly, that if there is a police call out for a domestic violence,
someone's getting arrested?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Which is weird because what if your neighbors called on you and you're fucking watching a football game or doing something ridiculous and everybody's yelling? You're like,
so,
what?
I think that you could.
Does it have to be one of them that call? Does it have to be one of the partners?
No, it doesn't. But there would have to be enough evidence. If they showed up and you guys were happy and there was a football game on and you had and there wasn't any potential, there wasn't anything that red flag that stuck out to anyone, then they probably would they wouldn't be arresting anyone.
Yeah.
But they would maybe keep an eye on you a little closer.
Yeah.
If there was concern at all. But Yeah, someone's definitely getting arrested.
That's what
And
I
then
thought.
if you're the person who calls and you want to drop the charges, they don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care what you have to say.
Yeah. They're like,
They say
you called.
it's now up to the state.
Hmm.
We get to decide if
Hmm.
the charges get dropped or not.
On an offshoot, because I was stationed there, I had a friend who called on his wife and he got arrested.
Yeah.
He's like, I called because she's beating me while I'm driving and you arrested me.
Yeah. It's like,
Which is the
really,
double-edged sword part.
it's a double-edged sword. It's not, doesn't really feel like it's serving
Hmm.
people the way it should.
Yeah.
It's causing maybe potentially a lot more trauma
Yeah.
than necessary. Again, potentially it's saving lives though.
Yeah.
So in that sense, like
But if he's the caller and she's screaming, like, I don't know. Anyway,
it happens a lot. I watch
I
a
know.
lot of like YouTube videos of like body cams
I know.
of like women who will call the police on their husbands, and then there's like either the story comes out or one of them was great. It was like this woman went to a fire station and claimed her husband was beating her, and then they go to the husband's house to like arrest him, and they have like a camera, their security camera in their house, and he's like shows it to them thinking he's still getting arrested because they were like in an altercation, but she's the one who like threw the first punch.
Hmm.
So she ends up getting arrested, which
Good.
it was actually pretty great because she was like such a bitch.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's always been this like, you don't put hands on women. Like, you don't like men shouldn't hit women. Well,
Right.
okay, women should also not be hitting
Right.
men.
Yeah.
So okay.
Yeah.
If you hit a man, get arrested for assault.
Right. She like slapped him around like
Yeah.
10 times before he even like put his hand on her. And
Assault is
it's,
assault, man.
yeah, it was like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
he did wrestle you to the ground, but you beat the crap out of him first.
Yeah.
So,
Like he shouldn't have to sit there and take it.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I get it. Okay. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So at this point, Harvey has pretty much given up on Alice and the whole getting back together and things like that. So he calls up a woman named Eileen Hunley in March. He had given her, her mother, and her sister a ride home several months prior. She was a 28-year-old Jehovah's Witness that worked at a daycare center. Even though Harvey was Roman Catholic, the two began a romantic relationship. In May of that year, Harvey even went to Kansas to meet her extended family. But by July, Harvey's temper had, come back out, along with his propensity to drink alcohol, which is not
his friend.
No, and it's against the Jehovah's Witness and
Oh,
the
right.
alcohol. And she's like, you didn't do this before.
Right.
So Eileen broke it off with him. On August 10th, 1974, Eileen visited with friends in her home. The next day, she did not attend church, and on the 12th failed to show up for work.
Oh.
The daycare center grew exponentially concerned when Harvey showed up to pick up Eileen's most recent paycheck.
Oh my God.
Since nobody was able to get a hold of her, law enforcement was brought in and a search started on August and continued through September. She was found September 17th when officers in Sherburne County responded to a body found in a wooded area near Zimmerman. A Caucasian female, approximately 23, they thought, of age at the time, had been dead for a minimum of 2 weeks. She had been bludgeoned to death, and a tree branch had been shoved
No.
into her vagina. I'm sorry.
No.
She was not identified until later on in the investigation, so she stayed a Jane Doe for quite a long time.
Oh. That is just like, that's great. That's just awful.
He's a horrible human being.
He's a horrible human being.
It continues. On September 8th, 16-year-old June Lynch and Lisa King were hitchhiking in Minneapolis. Harvey stopped and offered them a ride, but asked if they wanted to make money. $25 for accompanying him to pick up his son's truck that had run out of gas and to help him drive it back to town. The three drove out into the backwoods where he stopped. He got out and told June to come with him, leaving Lisa in the truck. He grabbed a gas can, screwdriver, and hammer before walking towards a second vehicle that nobody could see. Excuse me. As they walked out of view, Harvey turned and out of view of Lisa. I can see what I'm trying to say. Harvey turned and struck June, causing her to scream. Lisa got out to find out what happened, finding June lying on the ground, bleeding from her head, and Harvey was gone.
What?
Yeah. She didn't. I'm sure she didn't see him in a panic, and he ran, got in the truck, and left.
This guy is so strange to me.
He is. Lisa managed to get help, and at the hospital it was determined that June was struck with a hammer 7 times in the head.
Holy hell.
In the head.
Was she alive?
She survived. Likely thanks to Lisa being there and getting help so quickly.
Holy cow.
Otherwise, I'm sure she would have had either internal bleeding or swelling on the brain or something that would have been enough.
He makes no sense to me.
He doesn't make sense to anybody.
It's very, very sloppy.
He just doesn't seem to care.
Yeah, and it's he wants to rape some women and beyond that, he wants to just mutilate them.
Wants to attack people, I feel like. And then if he can get his rocks off, he does.
It's almost if he feels like he wants to get his rocks off, though.
Yeah. I know. He's more into the beating.
Yeah, it's really strange.
Honestly, the rape feels secondary to it, which is normally that seems to be the opposite, but this case he beats more women than he does anything else.
Yeah.
So on September 14th, 19-year-old Gwen Burton, a student nurse, was having car problems. She was at a Sears parking lot in Minneapolis when a green Chevrolet Caprice pulled up. Harvey got out and looked over the engine. He said he could fix it, but only if they went to his house to get the tools needed. Before she could say no, he took her arm and shoved her into the car, essentially. And then the two drove for a while until he stopped off a gravel road. And it sounds like he shoved her in the car and she just wanted to run but couldn't. And then he started driving, and then he got to this point where they just started having he just started talking to her. And then she was like, "What the fuck is happening?
What is going on?"
Yeah. And then he just becomes serious again and then goes to this gravel road. There, he forced her to perform fellatio on him. Then he choked and raped her. She lost consciousness several times before waking up on a blanket in a field.
Ugh, weird.
I know. He again forced fellatio and then used that stupid hammer handle.
Killed her.
No, he used the handle again.
No. It's so disturbing. It's so gross.
When he was done, he beat her with the hammer, leaving her in the field. But our little Gwen was a fighter.
Holy shit.
She woke up and said that at first she just wanted to lay down and go to sleep. And she's like, that would be it. I'll just go to sleep and be done. But then she thought about her sister who had just told her that she was pregnant with her first child and how she would never get to be an aunt or see this kid grow up. And so she had to overcome quite a few obstacles. First, she had to get herself out of the ditch. But she was too weak to stand all the way up because it sounds like part of her side, part of her was paralyzed from the injuries for a while. So she couldn't physically stand. So she had to crawl out of the ditch. And she said that several times as she was climbing up, she'd slide back down and then have to work her way back up again. And it took her hours to get out of the ditch itself. From there, she had to crawl through a barbed wire fence to get to the side of the road. And she said she didn't even realize that she could cut herself because she was already so badly injured that she just right over it and got cut up even worse. She said several cars passed her as she crawled for hours. But there wasn't much daylight. And one of the cars, somebody waved. And I didn't know if it was a kid or something. They said that somebody actually waved to her. She put a hand up and they waved back. I'm like, oh, that was probably a child and they had no idea what they were seeing. But if somebody's laying down on the ground, maybe see if they're okay.
Oh my God. That's also a huge fear of mine, though. Driving, if I was driving by myself and I saw someone crawling on the side of the road, obviously I'm going to stop and make sure they're okay. But I definitely have that fear that it's a trap.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. If I'm by myself or with my kids, I'm much less likely to stop for things, or I'll stop and call the police
Right,
and
and
wait.
I think that's probably what I would ultimately do if I saw that very scenario. I
Mhm,
would maybe not even stop right there, but I would, like, drive up to the next mile marker and then call the police.
mhm,
But it truly is, like, it's, like, one of those gut-wrenching, like, you're stuck in the middle of, like, your morals and then your, like, brain of
mhm.
saying, "Mm, you don't wanna die either."
Yeah.
Like
No, I get that, and there are hear so many times where it is traps and
yeah,
people do things, but then I don't it's hard. It's hard to be a good human.
it is. It is hard.
You're always like, "Oh, is this for real or
Yeah,
no?" There have been several times I've called the police. I've either not stopped or I've slowed down, got the information, and called, but usually it's in an isolated area where there's barely any service, and I'm like, "I am not getting fucked up here."
yeah,
Like,
yeah, for
this
sure.
is especially if you can't see the immediate like, if it was, like, an open field, I'd be more likely to stop because there's nothing around that you're
R
like, "I can see nobody else is
right,
here."
right.
But if it's, like, the wooded area, um, yeah, no, I always am like, "Well, what's beyond where I can see?"
Right.
So I'm just gonna, like, we'll call the police for you. How's that? I can do that for you.
Yeah.
And I've done it. I've done it a few times where I'm like,
Something
this
feels
feels
wrong here.
weird.
Yeah.
I will slow down, but I'm not getting out of this vehicle,
Yeah.
especially if I'm alone. Like,
100% if I'm alone.
yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah.
So after the person, waved, she was just like, "Oh, God, like I just have to keep going." And just before nightfall, she heard a tractor and a farm boy like saw her and stopped.
Oh,
Of course, it's always farmers,
I
man.
know because
They're
'cause they're
always
so
amazing.
humble. Like, they're just
Yeah.
such good
And it was like a young kid. Like we're talking teenager,
yeah.
not an adult. Immediately getting her help and getting her transported to the local hospital. There, she was found to have a depressed skull fracture in which the circle of bone that was hit with the hammer had been driven an inch into her left brain.
Whoa.
Yeah. While Gwen managed to survive, she was partially paralyzed on the right side for months, and she had issues with stamina, concentration, and balance.
That's incredible that she managed to
While Harvey may have thought himself smart by taking these women to different jurisdictions, as it turns out, they collaborated. Outside counties called Hennepin County and members of Carver County and Hennepin County Police Department got together on September 17th, 1974. The lead investigator from Hennepin County was Detective Archie. Oh, it's another hard last name.
I like the first name, though. See, that one?
Archie.
That's a good old school name, too.
Yeah.
Archie.
So it's Sonnenstall. The description of the attacker came out: a man 45 to 50, balding with a dome-shaped forehead and usually wearing a green work uniform.
Also, it's pretty stupid of Harvey to think that there's not gonna be any bit of, like, maybe it's the same guy. He uses a hammer on all of these people.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. The MO was similar
yeah,
and links were made.
yeah,
I know. I mean, it's good for us to be able to identify him.
yeah,
Not smart on him, but he's not that smart I mean, I'm glad
yeah.
that he's not that bright. The car in Gwen's case was identified as either a 65 to 68 green Chevrolet Caprice with black interior. And remember, he likes to have multiple vehicles. So this is no different than when he lived in Washington.
Yeah.
On September 18th, 18-year-old Sally Versoy was hitchhiking at 8:30 in the morning when Harvey pulled up with a green 1971 Chevrolet Caprice. Sally said that he used the same ruse we've heard before, that he'd pay her if she helped him get a car that was broken down and drive it back for him.
For his son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For $25, she agreed, but she said that she needed to stop at school to meet up with a friend, 17-year-old Diane Flynn. Harvey promised to come back in a little while after 9 to get her, so it sounds like he actually dropped her off, and she didn't get any bad vibes from him at that time.
Wow.
So at 9, he, true to his word, came back, and Sally brought Diane along with her. At one point, Harvey stopped and pointed at an area, saying the car was over there, and then asked us questions Sally wouldn't forget. He said, quote, "If you had a choice, would you rather be raped or killed?" End quote. Both girls immediately said killed. They're like, oh, fuck, we'd rather be killed.
Like, what a, like, spine-shivering question to ask someone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is when Diane started to get worried.
Yeah.
And she'd asked, like, she said that she just started to get annoying. She'd be like, are we there yet? Are we going to be there? How much further is it? Where is the money? Like, the money's not going to be worth the effort if we keep driving because of how long this is taking. In response, Harvey backhanded her, causing her lip to bleed. So Sally was like, oh shit, like trying to like find a way to smooth everything out so they could all be safe. So and she said that she was trying to think of a way to escape. And so she said that she would switch places with Diane to ease the tension. Luckily, Harvey's car was running on fumes because they had driven for so long and they needed to stop at a gas station. When they did,
they
the
ran.
criminals immediately took off.
Oh,
immediately.
100%.
And then they went and reported the man to police along with the information that he had long sideburns, a dimple on his chin, and smoked Camels nonstop. So they're just, the police they have this little picture from kind of the beginning attacks where people are literally just sprinting for their lives, or they don't have the memory, and now they're starting to get these other people trickling in, like these two girls that had a long conversation with him. They've been looking at him like they're like, oh, let's pick out these fine features that are gonna be a little more helpful than just a man in a gray suit. Now we know that he's got the dimple, which you're not going to be able to hide. And he's got the big forehead and, the same color hair, everything matched. And then they just add more to refine kind of
I'm sure
picture.
He smells of cigarettes if he's like chain smoking.
Yeah. I was like, I can't even, that's so gross. And so the detective, why did I not? I should have put his first name down. The one, Sonnenstahl, the hard name.
Archie.
Yes, Archie, thank you. Worked to connect the counties and identify the attacker. While doing so, Harvey continued to prowl. That's what he does. On September 20th, 18-year-old Kathy Schultz was last seen by her brother as she was getting ready for school. When she didn't come home that evening, her family started calling friends, working all through the night and calling police the next morning. The next day, 2 hunters in Asante County found her body in a field.
On a blanket.
Her face was crushed. 18-year-old.
And I always just assume that anyone with the last name Schultz is related to me, even if it's spelled differently.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's just the way people decided to spell their name when they came to America, but they're probably somewhere in Germany. They're like a long distance cousin of mine.
Oh, goodness. Sonnenstahl knew he needed more collaboration and held a meeting on September 23rd with detectives from Hennepin, Carver, Sherborne, Asante, and Kennebec counties, the Minneapolis Police Department, Minnesota State Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, and the pathologists from the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office.
They've got a whole team.
Yeah, they put it together. Like, oh, what is happening in our counties? This is not okay.
And I mean, it's a small state as far as population goes.
Yeah.
Not landmass, but like population. Like if someone is getting bludgeoned by a hammer every other month in that state, it's not going to go unnoticed.
Yeah. And the team together confirmed the details of the man were similar or the same in every case. Asante County was the only county to have any physical evidence.
Oh.
So in this county, there was a plaster cast of a tire tread at the site where Kathy's body was found. It was considered an Atlas brand belted tire. The team also decided that Harvey likely lived, their perpetrator, which is Harvey, but lived in Minneapolis, and a memo went out to all patrolmen within 100 miles.
Wow.
Like, they were like, no, So this is like a bolo type thing. Like,
Mhm.
this is what happened. This is what we're looking for, all this stuff. On September 24th, 2 Minneapolis patrolmen were on duty when they saw a man that fit the description on their memo. They watched as he stopped beside a pale green Chevrolet Caprice. And it sounds like they were both like,
this can't be.
we just got this memo.
Yeah.
Like, really?
No way.
When the officers pulled up behind him in their cruiser, Harvey attempted to shake them. But when the lights came on, he did eventually pull over. He identified himself, and for the first time, they had a name. Immediately, he was placed under arrest, and he was read his rights. And as I guess he was being told them, he stated, quote, "I know all that shit," end quote.
Oh.
Yeah, you've been arrested enough.
You've heard it a few times, haven't you?
Not his first rodeo. Oh my goodness. Harvey was questioned by Sonestal, in which he gave little information other than saying that he had given some of the victims rides at some point. So he was establishing that fingerprints evidence might be in the car because he's a good Samaritan and giving him a ride. But he definitely learned his lesson from Alaska and was not all out just confessing.
Again, there's no such thing as coincidence, Harvey.
Yeah.
You just happen to be with all of these girls that getting murdered, or raped.
Attacked, yeah. As they weren't getting anywhere, Sonestal put him in a lineup. He brought in Lisa King, June Lynch, Diane Flynn, and Sally Versoy. They all picked out Harvey.
Of course they did.
In addition, they took 12 photos of men to Gwen Burton, who was still in the hospital recovering at this point. God. When it came to Harvey, she stated, quote, "That's him. I don't want to look at it anymore," end quote. Like, she knew.
She knew. You would know. You would know. Even if you never even saw his face, I think you would just know.
As friends and acquaintances of Harvey were interviewed, it finally came out that Harvey had a girlfriend, Eileen, who went missing on August 10th. Her apartment was searched while forensic evidence wasn't found. A dentist bill was. With that, Sonestal made a call and had her dental records sent to Sherburne County, where an unidentified body remained. The dental records positively identified her as Eileen.
See, only in Minnesota. That's sort of what I like. How many other states you send a dental record to California and they're going to go, how many hundreds of people are we supposed to compare this to? But in Minnesota, there was one person in the neighboring county. That was a Jane Doe.
That had been bludgeoned.
Yeah.
Which is his MO.
I guess maybe if you were to pull out that detail.
Yeah. No, fair. I'm sure they didn't have as many bodies as other places, thankfully. The tires also... so Harvey's room and Chevrolet were searched, and the tires matched the Atlas tires in Asante County. Other than that, the vehicle and room were unfortunately pretty clean. A check with the DMV proved that Harvey had owned the Caprice for 8 months. Prior to that, he had owned a Chevrolet pickup. Detectives called the new owner, who had stated he had removed all the paint down to the prime coat.
Whoa.
But he hadn't driven it much. It was in storage. Jerry Billings was brought in for a lineup at this time, and after identifying Harvey, was shown the truck. Jerry stated the outside color was different, but the inside matched, and she was sure it was the truck in which she was attacked.
Wow.
So I guess there was a wooden bench inside of it or something. There was something specific that when she opened the door, she's like, "This is the truck."
Yeah.
The new owner graciously allowed police to take the truck to their garage to be processed.
Which I mean, when was this now? We're in the 60s?
No, late 70s.
70s? I know that now there's you can literally suck out every little piece of DNA that's inside of a... they rip those things down to the stud and they find everything.
Yeah. I know. So it'd be hard to just be like, yeah, take it, I guess.
Yeah.
But he was a wonderful human being.
Yeah.
During the processing, numerous strands of female hair, different lengths and colors, were found and bagged. The only other things left in the vehicle were maps from Washington, Oregon, Idaho, California, Montana, Wisconsin, and Kansas.
Holy crap.
In which 181 red circles were made in isolated areas.
Oh, what?
After learning Harvey came from Seattle, Sonistel put in a call to the area, finding detectives Dwayne Homan and Billy Bauman. The pair were not surprised about the call, only how long it took to receive it.
Oh.
Like, they're like, we've been waiting.
Yeah.
We literally sent you a whole docket on this man.
Yeah.
And you guys let it sit without looking at it.
God.
Unfortunately, the red dots were too great and in too isolated areas to be matched to really anything. So they don't know if it was bodies, but in several areas there were missing women, and in a couple areas Harvey was in town at the time of disappearance, but nothing could be linked to them. 181 red circles.
He would I guess, do you know if any of the red circles was he circling areas where these women were being found?
No. They were just red circles. They don't know why the circles were there.
I mean,
people went.
When they found women, were they able to cross match oh, we found that woman on the tribal lands and there's a circle on that tribal lands or whatever. And
they didn't find people. But these are you think about these the states that he's naming.
Right.
And it's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
How are you going to pinpoint that? If it's on a map, it could be, that circle might be 1,000 miles.
Oh, right. Okay. That's what I was sort of wondering, if he was getting specific about where he had dumped bodies and they could verify that with the bodies that they had found.
No.
Because I was going to say that needs to go to the Reddit sleuths.
Yeah.
And let them go start setting up grids and finding these people.
Yeah. At this time, the media got wind of all the killings and attacks in the Minneapolis area, that there was an upcoming trial for Harvey. Of course, they gave him a nickname.
What is it?
At this time, he was known as Harvey the Hammer.
Harvey the Hammer. Oh.
I know. How ridiculous.
Again, it's just too,
give him a shitty name, like Harvey the fucked up forehead guy.
Yeah.
No.
No.
Don't give him a good nickname.
Harvey the Bedwetter.
Yes. Oh, I like that one.
Yeah.
The Bedwetter.
Where it all began.
Yeah.
Let's just bring it back.
Harvey the Unwanted. We don't want you. Want you. So still, the state of Minnesota had their work cut out for them with the cases that could be proven. The first to go to trial was the attempted murder of Gwen Burton. Early in February 1975, jury selection started. The jury was selected by February 14th, and 2 alternate jurors were chosen 4 days later. Then the trial began with Judge Herring presiding. Opening statements began on February 19th. Defense attorney Douglas Thompson opened by admitting his client was guilty.
Oh, what?
But he did so because he was psychotic after being sexually traumatized as a child. In turn, the prosecution, specifically at the behest of Sonistel, brought in Detective Homan. Homan and Bauman were the 2 men that Harvey seemed to actually fear.
Yeah.
On February 24th, Gwen testified, talking through her ordeal and that she crawled for over 3 hours after the attack until she could find help.
I'm still so amazed by her story. Because she was in the hospital for months afterwards, paralyzed. So partially, but still she just managed to it sort of proves that not necessarily proves, but they talk a lot about neurological injuries and how so much of it is mind over matter a lot of times, when it's rehabbing after a stroke or things like that. And there's some people who are told they're never going to walk again, but then they go, no, screw that, I'm walking again. And then they walk again. And she sort of did that in real time right then.
Yeah, I talk good. Dang, I don't know what that was.
You got so excited.
I did. I also think it had to do with her age because she was young. So when you're younger, you tend to heal a little better. Even they've proven the brain can, have some healing in that respect. At this time during the trial, I'm not sure if she still had a cane, but she still needed assistance.
She
She
should
never,
have used a cane if she
yeah,
didn't need a cane.
she never got to work as a nurse because the memory wasn't there.
Mhm.
And when she got tired, she wouldn't be able to move as much and she would stutter and she got fatigued very
Yeah.
quickly. Like not everything recovered all the way.
Yeah.
So she definitely had lifelong effects from it. Yes, she did walk, but I think part of the reason she was probably paralyzed, I mean, having the bone driven in, and she had a painstaking surgery because they said that they had to make sure that they were, of course, remove all
All
of
of
the
the
pieces
fragments of bone and
that are an inch into the
yeah,
brain. So of course you're going to have,
which could at that point also cause some paralysis.
hmm
And
and the
also
inflammation
I was
and
gonna say
everything that goes with it.
brain injuries initially sometimes don't cause any problems, and then after a few days when your brain starts to get inflamed, that's when it actually causes.
Hmm.
I had a patient, real quick side note, this
No,
is
that's
one of
fine.
the craziest things ever. When I was working up in Seattle in the neuro ICU, we had a young boy come in. He had been having headaches for a few days, and
Hmm.
then finally one day just sort of didn't wake up. So we had him. He was intubated. He was not well. When they brought him in and they did a CT scan, he had a nail driven from the top of his head down into the middle of his brain, like a 3-inch nail. That he said he worked on a construction site and he has no idea how it got there. That was his memory of it all.
Oh, I'm sure that he wouldn't remember. That's
That's
fair.
all I can remember. But no one from the construction site knew anything. There was a lot of was there foul play? Was it intentional? But it was perfectly right in the top of his head, driven, and it was flush with his skull.
Oh my
So he
gosh.
never felt it when he was showering. It was crazy.
I feel like I touched my whole head when I'm showering.
It was
So
I mean, he was a teenager.
I
That was
know,
the
I
only
know.
thing that we were there's the only way you can explain this is that
Yeah.
he's a young boy who just isn't like
And tuned.
attention to
Yeah.
detail of his body, but we're he walked around with a nail in his head for 3 days before he ended up passing out.
That's,
Because
yeah.
it held the blood in place and eventually it started to get
Yeah.
actually it was more the infection that started to cause the issues.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, I could see that. Brain injuries are crazy. I had oh, now we're gonna go on.
I
Sorry,
know. It's so
I,
fascinating
I
though.
know I had a patient that was like a longer term patient that, I mean, looked like there was nothing there, nothing happening. You have to turn them every 2 hours. You're
Right.
doing all the
Right.
cares. There's no response to
They're
anything.
never giving you the thumbs up or the
Yeah.
wiggling of the
Hmm.
toes or
And
yeah.
I have this habit of people that are, even when they're not awake, of just chatting with them, like, I'm gonna do this, or I'm gonna do this,
Right.
or now we're gonna roll, and now we're gonna do this. I'm like, oh, how's your morning? Like,
Yeah.
and it's just, I don't know when it started to get ingrained in me. As a pretty young nurse, it was like, sometimes they can hear you. And I'm like, oh, I would not want somebody rolling me without telling
Telling
me.
me what's going on. Yeah.
And so I had this patient, and I think it was the third day, like three in a row, and third day, and I walk in, and I'm like, hey, how are you? And he looked at me and he goes, I'm all right. And I literally about shit my pants. I was like, I'm sorry. What?
Eh, welcome back.
And I look at him, and he I had swelling on the brain, and it was finally
Yeah.
resolving. And he was like, I'm feeling a little better. And he's like, you've been here, huh? And I was like, yeah.
Oh yeah.
How do you know? And he's like, you don't stop talking when you're doing things. And I'm like, nope, sure don't.
It's pretty incredible. That stuff is it's
Yeah.
really
I
incredible.
was just like, oh, yeah. So swelling on the brain. And I mean, he eventually went on to recover, got up and walked out.
Yeah.
But it took, but I'm like, oh, so in her case, I mean, something being driven into the brain,
Right.
a little bit longer lasting effects for her. But she did manage to go to trial. And I think she went to several trials. I'm like, ah,
Yeah.
bless her. Because then you have to face that person the entire time.
Oh, I would be all for it. And as I was saying, even if she didn't need a cane, I can tell you right now, I would have told that woman,
Get
I
in a
need
wheelchair.
you in double arm canes, walking in as rickety as you possibly can,
Yeah.
please.
Well, you'll see this defense team. We're a bunch of douche canoes.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Aren't they always? Um, So, so Homan came, and I guess that he never really introduced himself, but Sonestal was talking like with the defense team, and he had come up and they were all chit-chatting, and an admission of guilt came up in regards to, I think, the case in Washington. And that's when they turned in and they were like, "Hey, this is Detective Homan from
From
Washington." And the
Washington.
defense team was like, "What?"
Yeah.
Like, maybe you shouldn't open your mouth in a public area.
For real.
But
For real.
that was like the little like kick in the pants. Or like, okay, well, now we just know that he admitted to this in Washington if we need this.
Yeah.
Um,
I'll be taking that back to
yeah.
Mary. Thank you.
Yeah. Um, so again, she talked over her whole ordeal, and then June Lynch took the stand and talked about what she went through, as well as being beaten with the hammer. After that, Harvey took the stand and he responded to the defense questioning, admitting that he was guilty and he didn't think he was crazy, but that he heard God talk to him, and God told him these women were whores and he had to kill them.
That's so crazy.
It got worse because they even talked about like, well, if you could right now, would you kill Gwen? He's like, yeah.
Oh my God.
Like,
do you think that
that is above the line? Like, you should not be able to say that with the victim still in the fucking room. Because she had to listen to this man be like, yeah, I'd fucking kill her right now if I could.
Oh.
Right now.
Like,
No
there's
remorse.
a part of me that's like, he knew by saying that it was like maybe helping his case.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
He definitely.
Yeah.
Then the defense spoke about the abuse that he underwent as in his childhood, that he was surely crazy because he believed God spoke to him.
That doesn't mean you're crazy.
I know. Defense fed into those. Oh, yeah. In defense, he like fed into those beliefs before switching to his college experience. So prosecution brought up that he took classes on sociology, that he wrote many papers about how to act as a well-adjusted man, on sexual psychopaths, and on paranoia.
Well,
so he was an expert on how to act like all of those
these
things.
people, yeah.
That if he was paranoid schizophrenic, then how could he have perfect recall of dates, times, and places from his life from 4 years old on?
Yeah.
On February 26, Dr. Hector Zeller, the defense's psychiatrist, took the stand, stating that he was insane because he believed himself to be an ambassador of God, that he had prayed with Gwen and fixed her hair before bludgeoning her. All of this, Gwen herself later refuted on the stand. She's like, no, the fuck he didn't.
Yeah.
He walked over and beat me with a hammer. He never touched my head. He didn't pray with me. He didn't do anything. He walked over and smacked me with a hammer.
Yeah. Even, that's just like a
Bullshit.
pretty lame defense.
Prosecution brought in their own psychiatrist, Dr. Dennis Philander, who reported he couldn't be insane while having an excellent recall of his memories, that psychopaths can't recall dates and times. They don't know when things happen, and things will be reported out of order.
Right. It's
but
not
he was
lineal.
like, but he
yeah.
was perfect recall of everything. All the talk about psychology took until March 3rd, when final arguments and instructions were heard. The jury retired at 5 p.m. and returned with the verdict by 10 p.m. the same night. The verdict was guilty. Guilty of aggravated sodomy and guilty of attempted murder. On March 7th, Harvey was sent to St. Peter's State Hospital for a psychiatric examination. Like, they have to do a pre-sentencing one to make sure that they're competent. There he was found to have severe antisocial personality. So he had no empathy or conscience, but he wasn't psychotic.
Yeah.
They recommended imprisonment, not mental health treatment. But at this time, sentencing was deferred. First, he had to go through trial number 2.
Oh, I was like, why are they deferring his sentencing? They were going to put him on parole.
No, God, yeah, right. So this was for the assault of Jerry Billings and began on the first week of April with presiding Judge Crane Winton. If you recall, Jerry was 13 at the time of her attack, and now at 15 had some difficulty with the details, which defense kind of tore into her for, but rude.
I'm sort of like, sometimes I feel like she must have wanted to testify.
She did.
Yeah, I was going to say she's so young that usually they...
But I mean, they pick apart the details. Like,
Right.
did this happen? When did this happen? And she
Right.
was getting things wrong. I'm like, okay, she's a traumatized victim at 13. Of course, her memory, like, it's proven that your memory gets kind of messed up in order to protect yourself.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that she remembers
I was going to
any
say,
of
some
it is
people
amazing.
just totally black it out.
Yeah. So, however, the judge allowed the testimony of all other women who survived attacks by Harvey.
No, that's unheard of.
I know.
That is unheard of. You look so
I
pleased
put
right
that
now.
detail in because when I was like, the judge did what?
I
'Cause
know.
normally they're like, no, that can alter
People's perception of
but
who
this
this
judge
guy
was like,
is. It's relevant.
we need the real perception of what he is.
Yeah.
He's a monster. Harvey again took the stand, but this time stated he had never met Jerry. Didn't matter though. On April 18th, the jury found Harvey guilty on all counts against Jerry. Judge Whitten was annoyed about the trial, however, as it turns out in Minnesota, at least at this time, you're not going to like this, no sentence can exceed 40 years unless they are convicted of first-degree murder, which carries a life sentence.
Oh, yeah, that's
stupid.
Really stupid.
With that, on May 5th, 1975, sentencing was completed. Harvey received 33 years by Judge Herring on the Gwen Burton case, and then he went in front of Judge Whitten, who gave him another 30 years for the sodomy of Jerry Billings, though he'd only have to serve 10 of that, because that would be over 40. How dumb.
Wait, so you couldn't serve more than 40?
Uh-huh. Unless you got first-degree murder.
That is so stupid.
I really hope that law has changed, and I didn't look it up because it made me too mad.
It has to have
It
changed.
better have. Then, on June 19th, 1975, Harvey was indicted on murder charges for the killing of Catherine Schultz.
Okay.
On September 4th, he was arraigned on the first-degree murder charges of girlfriend Eileen Hunley.
At least it can be first-degree murder charges, too.
For the murder of Kathy, he took a plea deal which allowed him to agree to second-degree murder. On February 9th, 1976, Harvey waived his constitutional rights and took the stand admitting to what happened to Kathy. Judge Back stated, quote, "Your crimes are so gross that there is no point in commenting on them," end quote. Before pronouncing his sentence, true to Harvey, he replied, quote, "Don't comment on them then," end quote.
Oh my God.
He was given 40 years. So nothing, essentially.
That's so crazy to me. That's so crazy. What's the point? You're just wasting the state's money at this point by like trying him anymore.
That's why the Judge Whitten was so mad. He's like, what the fuck does this even matter?
Yeah.
Like at this point, this is ridiculous.
It's like literally you're just wasting tax
I
dollars.
know. I'm like, can it be deferred? And then once you get out, you're like, oh, by the way, let's go back to this one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
God damn it. Then he went to trial for Eileen, in which prosecution talked about Harvey brutalizing her and leaving her in the woods, then trying to pick up her last paycheck. On June 24th, 1976, the jury came back with a conviction of murder in the first degree, and he received a life sentence.
There you go. It's because of the fraudulent check.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's what quantifies the first degree.
Yeah, I think that's what did it, that they could prove, because otherwise there was no actual physical evidence.
Yeah. So I just learned this today, actually. Like literally, I was learning it when I was watching something about the assassin in New York. Maybe it's state to state, probably it differs, but first degree murder is like very difficult to like pin on a person, at least in New York State, where it's like it's either like the killing of a police officer, a firefighter, a judge, or if it's done and there's another felony crime committed within the act of that murder. So like if it's the same in Minnesota, it's when he murdered her and then he fraudulently cashed her check.
Yeah, I'd have to look into that because I know it differs state to state. Because here in this state, I don't think that would be the aggravated factors. First degree is still like premeditated murder, which he clearly had because he took her into the woods and did it after she broke up with him, and it wasn't like a frenzied like a bar attack.
Right.
And here I know it's called aggravating factors, but I think because you can have first degree with or without them, and it just the aggravating factors here in this state are more. Are you going to get life? Or are you going to get the death penalty?
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely think it's state to state, but because right now that guy in New York is charged with second degree.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. In 1978, the Minnesota Supreme Court heard Harvey's appeal. The question came up of whether or not juries should be told what might happen if they were to acquit a defendant by reason of mental illness. Don't look at me like this. On August 11th, after consideration, the justices unanimously upheld Harvey's conviction.
Okay.
There were two that were in question about it, though, that they were like, well, it might have an effect and maybe they should understand what's happening. And then the rest of them were like, no, it doesn't matter whether they know. Like, they're still going to make that same.
Yeah.
After that, Harvey was eligible for parole in 1993, technically, but was not given parole. Instead, he remained behind bars much longer. Harvey spent time in numerous prisons, but the bulk of it was served in Oak Park Heights in Minnesota, which sounds like a retirement village.
I know. It sounds
not a prison.
Very cush.
I'm like, what is this? Sounds lovely.
Yeah.
On March 6, 2023, Harvey finally died at age 95 in prison.
95?
Of natural causes.
Good God.
Yeah. He lived a very long life.
It's all that.
Not fair.
No, it's not fair. That's crazy.
And of natural causes.
I know. It's like so frustrating that he gets to spend all that time on this earth, and then his little Jehovah's Witness girlfriend died in her 20s. Like,
he killed a 15-year-old.
I know, but I was just thinking, like, she dedicated her life to God.
I know.
And like,
but all of these victims were young women that had their whole
they
lives
all,
ahead of
yeah,
them.
they
like, come on now. I don't know. The fact that 95, like, how dare you? That feels insulting.
It is insulting. It actually is insulting.
2023, you made it till then.
You wasted so much oxygen being here.
You did. And taxpayer dollars.
Yeah.
So many things. I wish he would have died faster.
I would have hoped someone would have helped him die faster.
Yes. Wish he would have broken all of his bones.
Yeah.
It's fine.
With a hammer.
With a hammer.
Like a little one.
Bludgeoned him with a mop handle.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Left it in him.
Yeah. God, I hate people like him. I hate when I hear things
as we're like fantasizing about what he did, but he deserved it.
I wish that he would have had a horrible life.
Yeah.
I hope he had arthritis and it hurt every day to wake up and move. Like rheumatoid arthritis.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that his joints curled in and he could barely move.
Yeah, and like his spine got compressed. And so he just like was no longer 6'2". Now he's like 5'10". Yes. And he's like just sort of melting internally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes me feel better when I say things like that. Alrighty. Well, to all those out there listening, be careful. It's a dangerous world we live in.